In medieval times, when life moved at the slow pace of candles burning down and church bells marking the hours, the idea of getting high was not strange or scandalous but simply another part of daily existence, woven quietly into the rhythms of ordinary people who sought escape, comfort, or a moment of softness in a world that often felt heavy and predictable. You might imagine that people of the Middle Ages lived in constant seriousness, but the truth is that they knew all kinds of ways to alter their minds, though they rarely talked about it directly and often pretended it was just medicine, or prayer, or a normal household remedy. If you were a peasant working long days in the fields, you might begin and end your day with ale so mild and murky that it was safer to drink than water, yet strong enough in large quantities to make you pleasantly warm and disconnected from your worries. Medieval ale was thick, earthy, and sometimes brewed with herbs that added strange undertones, things like henbane or wormwood, which could give you dreams that felt like drifting through fog. You might not even know that the herbs could make you feel strange. The local brewer might simply use what was available, and people accepted those sensations as part of life. Wine existed too, especially for those with more money, though it was often sour, spiced, or watered down, and even nobles drank enough at feasts to experience that soft, floating feeling of the world tilting slightly and conversations turning slower and less coherent as the night stretched on. But alcohol was only one part of the medieval landscape of mind-altering experiences. There were also herbs collected by midwives, healers, wise women, and traveling sellers who would wrap dried leaves in little packets and whisper that they were for pain, or sleep, or courage, or visions. Some of these plants, like mandrake, had reputations that lingered for centuries. A single root could be soaked in wine to create a potion so strong that people used it before surgery to dull the agony. But if someone took too much, they could slip into a drifting, dreamlike state where time seemed to vanish, voices sounded distant, and reality felt like a soft blur around the edges. In small doses, though, some people took mandrake simply because it made them feel light, whispery, and far removed from the cold stone walls and chores of daily life. Then there was opium, which existed in the form of dried poppy juice imported through long trade routes from the east. Apothecaries kept it in jars and labeled it as a strong medicine, which it was, but many understood its gentler side as well, the way it wrapped the mind in warmth, turning pain into cotton and thoughts into long, drifting trails. Most people never used it, but travelers, scholars, and healers sometimes did, especially those who needed relief during long nights or who sought a sense of peace. They rarely described it openly, but they knew exactly what it did. Herbal mixtures called sleep potions sometimes combined opium, henbane, hemlock, and other plants in tiny amounts, strong enough to bring calm, but dangerously close to the edge of something darker. These were used cautiously, whispered about, and handed down through families like secret knowledge. Still, many of these substances weren't considered sinful or forbidden. They were part of the medieval worldview, where the line between medicine, magic, and relaxation blurred. People believed plants had spirits, humors, and natural properties gifted by God, and using them was a way of balancing the body rather than chasing pleasure. Yet pleasure came anyway. Even incense in churches, thick clouds of frankincense and myrrh, could make your head swim if you stood close enough. Some monks wrote that long hours of chanting in smoky halls created sensations of floating, clarity, or even visions, though they described them as spiritual rather than physical. Meanwhile, wandering mystics and hermits sometimes fasted so long that their minds slipped into altered states from hunger alone. They experienced dreams and colors that felt divine, though today we might recognize those sensations as the mind responding to exhaustion. There were even festivals where people intentionally let themselves go. During celebrations like Carnival, the entire village might drink far more than usual, dance wildly, wear masks, shout nonsense, and behave in ways that felt freer than the rest of the year allowed. For a brief moment, everyone shared a communal high, a joyful chaos that came from fermented drinks, the excitement of crowds, and the sense of being suspended outside normal rules. Even eating could bring strange sensations. Medieval people used spices like nutmeg and saffron in doses we would consider unusual, not realizing that nutmeg in particular can cause hallucinations or dizziness in large amounts. Most did not consume it often enough to experience this, but travelers' reports occasionally mentioned merchants or sailors who took too much and ended up confused, giggling, or overwhelmed by vivid, drifting thoughts. And then there were mushrooms, some harmless, some deadly, and some with effects that must have startled people who didn't know what they had gathered. Though not widely documented, poisonings and strange reactions certainly happened. A person might wander through a forest, pick what looked like an ordinary mushroom, and later feel the world ripple and shift around them, hearing sounds that weren't there or watching patterns move across the walls. Whether they thought they had encountered spirits, demons, or simply eaten something bad, the result was the same: a sudden, unplanned journey into an altered state. Medieval doctors, who followed the theories of Galen, believed that emotions and thoughts were tied to bodily fluids called humors, and they recommended different substances to restore balance. Feeling melancholy, they might suggest wine or a warming herb. Feeling restless, a cooling, sedative plant might be used. The remedies often produced mild highs, though that word didn't exist yet. They spoke instead of calmness, cheerfulness, clarity, or lifting of spirits. Meanwhile, in the countryside, wise women who couldn't read Latin kept their own versions of these remedies. They might brew teas to help you sleep, oils to calm your nerves, or little pouches of herbs meant to bring comfort or courage. Some of these mixtures contained mild psychoactive plants, and villagers trusted them deeply, passing them down through generations. At the same time, religious life created its own kind of mental escape. Hours of repetitive prayer, solitude, cold stone rooms, flickering candlelight, and the drone of monastic chanting could send a person into a state of deep inward focus. Many monks described visions of angels or bursts of clarity that came after long periods of isolation and meditation. Whether these were mystical or psychological, they certainly felt like altered states of consciousness, unexpected and profound. Medieval people even believed dreams could carry messages, and some sought out substances to enhance them. A small dose of an herb before bed might bring vivid colors or symbols that felt meaningful. They didn't view this as getting high, but as communicating with the spiritual world. But perhaps the most common form of medieval mind alteration was simply exhaustion. Long days of labor, limited food, smoky indoor air, and constant physical strain left people feeling lightheaded or detached without any herbs or potions at all. A farmer might stand up too quickly after a long day and feel the world tilt. A traveler might walk for hours and drift into a half-dreaming state. These small, unintended highs were part of life in a world where sleep was irregular and nutrition was unpredictable. And so, if you imagine yourself drifting into medieval times, you would find a world where getting high wasn't a rebellious act or a hidden culture but simply one thread in the tapestry of daily existence, tucked quietly between faith, medicine, exhaustion, celebration, and the simple human desire to feel just a little different from the heaviness of reality. The Middle Ages were full of slow-burning days, smoky nights, and small escapes that made people feel lighter, softer, and briefly unburdened. And as their world moved gently forward, candle by candle, harvest by harvest, those fleeting sensations must have felt like tiny moments of relief, drifting like warm air in a cold stone room, carrying them just far enough away to breathe a little easier before returning to the ordinary rhythm of life.